Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I'm going to be reviewing Agatha Christie's murder mystery, Taken at the Flood. This is one of the books she wrote in the 1940s, which I think is actually one of her best eras, based off the books I've read. This is a classic Hercule Poirot murder mystery, and I'm sure I butchered that name because I always butcher the name. This is just a delightful book. I've read, most of the Agatha Christie books I've read, I've loved. I'd say that I think I've read 11 or 12 of them, and I've had one or two duds. I think that the Miss Marple novel that I read, at Bertram's Hotel, was pretty much a dud, and Five Little Pigs, while interesting, was fairly bland. And I enjoyed Halloween Party, but it wasn't a favorite. Other than those three, everything else she's written has been in the amazing category that I absolutely loved and was absolutely blown away by, whether it was the twist or the setup or everything and the writing style and the characters, everything. I've loved everything else that I've read of hers. So that's a pretty solid batting average when I not only like 75% of what you've written, but I think 75% of what you've written is top tier in your genre. That is just impressive. There's a reason she's called the Queen of Mystery. And so I picked up this book next, and I really didn't know what it was going to be like, but man, was it worth it. This is a book that is basically set up as one thing and ends up being about something that's connected, but you would have had no idea, but in the best way. It's still a murder mystery. But I think that this book implicitly promises that there is a character who everyone thought was dead, and he might not actually be dead. That's promised in the prologue. And then the whole book unfolds, and you start wondering, maybe he isn't dead. Maybe he's gonna come back. How would that affect people? It's like a reverse mystery, where instead of who kills the person dies and you figure out who killed them, maybe it's the person lives, and how does that affect everyone else? And so I was really fascinated by that dynamic. And then the dynamic shifts. There is a murder of a character, I should say characters. Multiple people are murdered in this book. And all of a sudden it turns into the traditional murder mystery, but not for the reasons you think. You expect it to be based off of certain motives, certain plans, certain reasons that are all laid out logically in the book. And yet they don't happen like you would expect. This book, I would really be interested in hearing if there's someone who actually called how the mystery unfolded in this book before it happened, because it is so uniquely written. And it's one of those things that you would never see it coming, I think. And yet, once it happens, I can totally see the setup for it. This is a similar way I felt to Sparkling Cyanide, where as I was reading this book, I was like, oh my goodness, I see where that piece of information was in the book now. I see how that becomes relevant. And I think that this book's maybe even a little bit more impressive than Sparkling Cyanide in the fact that every single chapter and every single scene in this book had immense value. Sometimes you're just gathering information and the author will collect red herrings because those are not pieces of information that's not important, but to try to throw the reader off. All mystery authors do this. However, it doesn't actually feel that way in here because even the red herrings actually have value to the story. You just don't realize how that's possible that a red herring could have value. But every piece of information that he collects has some way of turning up in the end in a good way to unfold the mystery. And I just thought that was so clever and creative and inventive. And so I really appreciated the way that Agatha Christie wrote this book. And I was able to read it in 2 sittings really quickly. It's a really quick read. It's only about 260 pages long, as most of her books are in that length. It's rare that she goes over 300 pages, and the print size is fairly large. But I also liked the connections to World War II, to Africa travel, to making it more of a it's set in this little area, but there's also some global connections that were interesting. There is one thing I thought about during this book, however. Agatha Christie was from another time, and as such she writes her characters in a different way than we would write characters today. However, there's a way she writes women that is, I've noticed this before, but boy, was it noticeable here that if an author today wrote a woman the way that she writes some of the women in here, I think that they'd get eviscerated by reviewers and social media because of just the portrayal of strong women, the portrayal of female characters would not be acceptable today, and yet was acceptable at the time. And it's just a fascinating dynamic. And like the characters are so often described as being vulnerable, and it's just so different than when you read a book, especially a book by a woman today. Women authors especially are very cognizant of this today, but it's just interesting to read this back in the day. And so I just thought that was really fascinating. So I really loved this book. It's gotten me pumped up again for Agatha Christie books. I don't have many more. Do I even have any? I don't know. I have one Agatha Christie novel left on my shelves, and then I don't have any more Agatha Christie books, so I need to get some. But I'm very excited to read more because this book series, she's one of my favorite authors. So if you've read Taken at the Flood, what did you think of it? Did you like it, dislike it? What did you think of the mystery and the twists? Do you agree with me that you could consider this like a reverse mystery in some ways? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments section down below. But until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.